right, happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the AI and UX Lunch and Learn. My name is Paul Bryan, and I produce the Strat Product Design Strategy Conference in Asia, Europe, and the US, and also our latest event, the AI Product Design Bootcamp. Our mission at Strat is to help you adapt faster to the myriad changes that AI is bringing to our field. And that's what I'm very happy to talk about with today. I have two guests. First up is Dr. John Whelan. John leads Insights and Innovation at Brilliant Experience. He helps global brands understand the psychology behind their customers' behaviors and form critical decisions with customer insights. Uh, about halfway through, I'm going to welcome Tia Clement onto the live broadcast. Tia is a product designer with Red Sift, and she's going to share her AI and UX learning trajectory. But first, let me welcome John. Hi, John. Welcome to the Stratosphere.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity. It's great to be here.
And I've been seeing your post for quite a while. I appreciate your perspective on bringing AI in and embracing it to an extent. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we do, tell us about your trajectory. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so very briefly, I have a PhD in cognitive science. I was a professor. I became a consultant in really sort of doing research and strategy, and have my own company since 2011. And really just saw some of these new AI possibilities, not this Halloween, but last one, and really started to dive in and have interviewed founders, and we've actually completely sort of renovated the way that we do research at Brilliant Experience because of the things we've learned. And so it's actually been a big journey in the last like 2 years for us.
Excellent. Well, let's touch on some high points. What are some of the main things that you find people are trying to ramp up on in terms of getting AI to help with UX research tasks?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think some of well, it's interesting. People actually focus on getting analysis to be easier. So either having tools that allow you to analyze hundreds or thousands of interviews or your whole repository. But there are actually really interesting things happening in other worlds, like this notion of synthetic users we can talk about, and also moderating interviews using AI, which is an interesting new possibility that we've been working with actually too.
I imagine some of this is controversial.
That's a fair statement. So I mean, actually we can start with synthetic users because that when they first came out, I remember syntheticusers.com first heard about it. People are like, oh, we need to test humans, not some sort of synthetic users. What a waste of time. And I think my initial reaction was like nails on a chalkboard too. All of us who just love doing research, deeply understand an audience, are really empaths, it's so detaching. But actually, when you start to dig in and be a little more thoughtful and really try these things, I think there are opportunities for them to be a make things better for us as all of us for as doing any research. So that could be things like testing a research plan or considering ideas or being able to simulate a edge case. It might be really hard to recruit. And so, rather than having zero, you've got some information you can go on and then test things with real humans. So think of it as an augmentation or a support and not, a means unto its end, itself. And so, yeah, these things are very sort of foreign and initially creepy. And so it's worth I think what I just implore everyone on the call here to do is try these things and then make, form your own educated, decision on these things.
Okay, so I do want to hit some of those high points of the tools that you find most useful. And I will mention to everybody, go ahead and put questions into the chat,
Sure.
and then I'll take a look at those questions in about 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes. But start putting questions in chat whenever you want to. Um, so let's take this synthetic users and drill a little bit deeper, because before I did events, I was actually a user researcher and consultant and did a lot
Right.
of home studies and stuff like that. And so let's suppose I'm working for this e-commerce company,
Hmm.
and I'm able to either go to people's homes and kind of see like what they did and give them a diary of sorts or whatever, or have them record themselves, kind of a rich, thick description of their experience,
Yeah.
basically. However, it's not that easy to get to customers. Sometimes they don't want to be interviewed, or they're just customers of that e-commerce company, and their behavior patterns can be traced pretty easily. And then also, um, take an integral so you get all those behavior patterns of people like that. Is that kind of what we start digging into to get these synthetic users? We use data from customer interactions?
Yeah, thank you for asking to be very concrete. And so let's take there are several tools that do this now, but I'm going to give you some concrete sort of. So first of all, you can do this using um, normal LLMs and actually prompt them to become synthetic users and try that. So I encourage everyone can just try, and so we can go ahead and start there. But there are some specialized tools like verve.com or syntheticulsers.com, and they both have sort of very sophisticated ways they poll globally and keep collecting new information on everyone, in addition to like social listening and other things like that. So you can actually be quite sophisticated in bringing in this wide swath of data. So to your point, on syntheticulsers.com, they have different ways of simulating or replicating or we can decide the right term of emulating what humans might do. And so that can be actually create a diary of how you're doing this through the day. It can be actually creating an interview and interviewing 100, 200 of these simulated users. And keep in mind that, in lots of cases, we're both based in the US right now. We might be a little bit US centric because it's easier to find someone here. And these are ways to say, well, how might this differ in New Zealand, in Thailand, in Germany? And very quickly get some concept and even sort of expand your mind on, oh, that's actually worth considering over there, not necessarily taking it as fact, but a good way to get started and sort of broaden your perspective.
It seems, maybe this is a very old school question, but it seems like one of the first pushbacks I would have from somebody that I want to make some changes to what they do based on what I'm saying these users want, that they're going to give me some pushback and they're going to say, so that's not like real people. That doesn't matter what you just said because it was just made up by some AI. I mean, I can imagine
Oh
somebody
yeah.
saying, what would you say in return?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. One is, isn't this a great tool for, say, a designer or a product owner who just needs a quick question asked, like, should I say this word or that word, like sort of low priority kind of things? Great. Let's go ahead and use synthetic users in those cases where you never would have talked to anyone and you get some sort of baseline reading. And rather than just trusting your gut. For the very critical, you're trying to make the next unicorn, great. Let's go ahead and make sure we've got real user data. Um,
Okay.
and I think that actually increasingly putting these things side to side. So I teach a class on this, and yesterday we put side by side. Here's 30 people we interviewed who were using AI tools in America, and just what did they use them for in personal life. We then created synthetic users in Verve and in this syntheticulsers.com, and there were seven major points we extracted from our humans that we interviewed, and we got six of those seven from one tool and seven of seven from the other. And so yeah, I guess one point to make is even if they're off a little bit, they might
Mhm.
be a starting point. And the other is that remember what ChatGPT like 2 was like, I don't know, maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, and now what it's like. And so imagine that level of increase in precision with these tools too. So even if it's just getting ready for these to be valuable, I think is important, though
Yeah.
I might say they've got some already today.
I remember when Google first came out and I was using a search engine called Alta Vista and I
Right.
liked it better because it looked nicer and I don't know, I just liked it better. What I didn't
Mhm.
understand was that Google was learning every search. And so like you're saying, what we see today isn't what we get, it's what we have today, right? And
Mhm.
so those tools can get a lot better. I imagine some like financial institutions might want to upload their own data and then
Yes.
have, instead of a generic LLM, give them, you know, archetypes out of the data that they provide.
Yeah, so you're actually absolutely right, and that all these groups have that in the forefront of their mind. So every time if you were doing data collection or you've got a set of interviews you've got and you're putting them in one of these tools, absolutely, first of all, it's a walled garden. Pepsi never learns from Coke and the reverse. Um, and it wouldn't be a business otherwise. But Secondly, they are designed so that as you accumulate more information, so it might be a Gartner study, it might be your interviews, it might be customer service calls. Increasingly, these are designed to bring together things. So in our research world, there's kind of right now, practically, there's almost three groups. There's the user research people that might be working with products. There might be innovation teams going after stuff. And then there's the groups that are more marketing focused, and they might call themselves the insights teams in big organizations.
Mhm.
Really, you can see these coming together and pooling all this to build stronger representations of your customers. So it's a
Very cool.
big change, I think, coming. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one big area, synthetic users. What's another area that comes up a lot? Like, how do we do this because that's going to streamline our work a lot?
Yeah.
What area does that fall into?
The thing that was the biggest change for us. So we used to say for very big groups, like actually Google's one of our clients. Uh, it typically took us about 7 weeks to do a big study with them to do, getting the stakeholders aligned, figuring out what our interview guide's going to be, finding the participants, interviewing them, analysis. And anyway, all that we've brought down to really 7 days, and it's really remarkable. And we can talk about, well, what's the quality of that? And I'd have a heart attack if it wasn't high. So we can speak to it. But the biggest change there is actually using AI to moderate interviews. So it
Hmm.
sounds unusual, but the idea here, and so not just so we've had for a long time unmoderated interviews like user Zoom or user testing. Um, but with this, there are tools. So let me just give you some examples. There's one called Outset, another called Wondering. There are several of these, so I can kind of keep going. But all of these, what they do is allow you to ask. It asks dynamic follow-on questions based on what the person's saying. So it becomes a more natural and more nuanced interview than you would have on an unmoderated case. The power of this is that these are large language models that are underlyingly in there. And so we can test people across languages. So we've got global reach. We can do things in New Zealand while I'm sleeping. So we can actually do incredible scale and reach that way. So I think there actually are opportunities with that where it makes it so fast for us. We can say, yes, I can do 100 interviews in 2 days. And it's just sort of mind blowing. Like, how is that possible? And then
Wow.
combined with AI analysis, you can actually, it's not overwhelming to collect that data. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. So I'm happy to answer questions and stuff for folks. But no, please go ahead, Paul.
I can imagine some people would prefer to talk to an AI moderator than to talk to another person. Based on I did a lot of research in the field, and
Yeah.
I think there's some people that would rather that. It's more convenient. Um, uh, uh, Questions get asked in a professional, repeated way. It's very
Mhm.
consistent. I think the biases you can formulate ahead of time what biases we're going to build into this. So I see a lot of advantages. I guess one, as a person in the field and remembering my assistant falling asleep in somebody's couch in San Francisco as we asked them about their home improvements. Um, but was something sparked something, and then our strategy ended up being this serendipitous,
Yeah.
precipitation. And so, how do you balance the efficiency of, wow, saving lots of energy and time, and the analysis probably very keyed back into the analytics, right, that you have. So
Right.
it's an excellent, wired model, but how do you do both?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we've talking, that's an excellent question. So what we typically do is a subset of, just so I'm going to say things that sound a little strange, like human to human interviews, just to be clear. Um, and then we understand, some of the things that we might really want to focus on. We would actually test our test plan as well with synthetic users to see what comes up. Um, then we can scale our work and do this stuff with AI moderation. Usually something interesting comes up from that, and we turn around and do some follow-on interviews ourselves. So, and keep in mind also, we can do smaller slices. So you and I probably in that era would, it would be, you'd kind of be like, this is the big study we're doing this year or this
Yeah,
quarter or whatever.
right.
And with this, you can kind of say, yes, I'm going to test 20 people. later this week, let's talk about what we found and see what we're going to do with the next 20. So we can
Yeah.
be a little bit more dynamic that way too. And obviously, when there were sprints involved, we can keep up with sprints. And I think the other real power here is there's so many questions that product owners had that they're like, oh yeah, we can't get you answers to that in time for that deadline.
Hmm.
And now, it may not be a perfect thing. So this is a hard thing for a scientist to say, I can get you more, some data that may be less precise or less, you know, nuanced than it might have been if we had all human to human interviews, but still I'm getting you something rather than nothing. And also, I'm being more inclusive by having people in all these different languages around the world. So when we've got Nestle or Mars or one of these really, really international clients, it's really helpful to have that breadth.
Absolutely. And I can see how they can shape those studies more because it is something that is programmatic rather than them just being in touch with us in the field, right? Um,
Mhm.
I guess maybe it's 80/20. Maybe there's some kind of 80/20 happening
That's
there.
right.
Because I remember this guy in San Francisco. This was like 2005 or something, 2006. But he just like was sitting there, and then he kind of took his iPad. What I want to do is look at my back patio with my iPad, and then just start seeing kind of what I want to do next, and get some prices. And he described this thing that nobody had said before to us, and so I was like, wow,
Mhm.
okay. So I
Yeah.
think I think both are necessary, but I also see all the times we just had sweat running down our face, waiting for somebody to get into the call. Maybe they didn't show up or other things. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
waste in the
So,
user
so
experience field.
Yeah, one of the questions actually in the chat was about staffing. Has my use of AI tools changed my staffing at Brilliant? And so, really, I think the key point is that we can, and so both the qualities of the people and the number of people we need. So, one piece there is it's true that we can scale as a very small, or we're a handful of people. Um, we can do very large scale studies with a small number of people. Absolutely true. And I think the other piece, I think the question was about sort of experiences people need. And it is true that we need folks that are able to do this sort of analytical thinking. So just to give you a sense, we spent a majority of our time, we looked it up in timesheets and stuff, on like scheduling, being there for interviews, doing maybe even tagging, transcripts, stuff like that. 80% of our time now is on the synthesis, storytelling, client interactions, being persuasive. So in even our deliverables, so you probably are used to making some sort of deck, and the favorite deliverable we've been providing recently has been synthetic users that represent this data. And then you can on your phone, you can have Verve calls them a verb, and but you can have a live synthetic user that basically live, I guess we can debate, but you can talk to. So that stakeholder can be driving home and ask this representation of the data questions. It's like, what? And so it's
That's
very remarkable, right? The changes that are possible. And we can debate if they're good ideas, but they're out there.
well, but I think that makes more room for the experts at being able to do that because then they have a value that's hard to replicate, right? They're more of a
Mhm.
curation aspect of what's going on. I think that's a very powerful formula.
Yeah, so it is interesting. So what the notion here is that your specialty becomes much more right, partly curator and orchestrator, and also making sure the level of quality throughout the system is high. And so you still need to know those old skills that you and I have from going through interviews and so on. And so Deirdre actually in the chat, I just glanced over, said, if you're doing this, getting something rather than nothing, isn't that, become going to become the norm? And I think that, other folks have felt very strongly that we need to do human to human interviews every single time. And I think this is where my sort of like business pragmatism, comes in. So I do want you all to try a tool like there's one called Herd. I'm sorry, there's so many of these different ones, Herd by Ellis or wondering.com. Both of those show you how people like product owners can do their own research because you can say, here are my business goals. Here are the people I want to test. It creates an interview guide. and you can adjust it, and it says, here's how I'm going to find these people, and then it provides some sort of summary. So you can imagine the researchers actually just, people going around the researchers because that is so easy and I can get an answer in 2 days. So there's a balance here to be struck of business pragmatism and, high level research and what's the nuance level that's needed. It's a really
Yeah,
important question that we don't have a good, collective answer to yet.
true. And to be fair, I don't hear of anybody getting the kind of engagements we got, back then, right? You don't
Hmm.
have that kind of luxury to just be in people's homes and let's take a month to look at the video. You just don't have it anymore. So I'm saying that, what about that? So maybe as experts, we do push back at some point and say we need to be in the field for X amount. But for these things, like
Yeah.
you said, it's just so much more efficient and the questions are answered so much faster. So maybe there's some balance there.
Right. And actually, there are a couple notes, if you don't mind me sort of just following along with the chat. Sabine here was asking, I wonder how AI moderators handle like nonverbal cues, like hesitations and confusion. The answer is they are LLMs, right? So they respond to the language, but not other cues yet, right? So there are capabilities of, facial emotion detection. You can do we can't quite do things down to the level of like pupil dilation like we do in psychology, but I anticipate more to come. But to your point, I really want you to actually try these tools to be the person who is being interviewed and then do crazy things, right? Say, I'm so upset, why are you doing this? Or say, I like ice cream sandwiches, which has nothing to do with the question that the thing is asking you, and see how it responds. So we as researchers or even product people have to get a really good handle of what these things are capable of and kind of start to get that gut feeling of, oh, this could be valuable in this situation. And it won't embarrass us as if we're declaring we're Mars and doing this interview, if it starts going crazy. So they are designed to not hallucinate, to not do other things, so you can set things differently. And the normal LLMs are set to be more imaginative. And these ones for analysis, for example, are locked down and do not do creativity. They do what was in the transcripts or nothing. So that's what we would want as researchers. So yeah, I want you all to explore these possibilities.
Well, that brings up that we are recording this, and Valerio is on my team. Let's remind John to maybe list some of these things in the when we post the video to list some of these resources because they're fantastic. This is really helpful. Any other area, and you can feel free. I don't do two things well at once, so if you want to look into that and kind of see what's going on
Hmm.
there. But
Yeah.
if there's nothing
Well,
else there in chat,
yeah, I do have one thing actually. So I Deirdre made a point here, and she said, "Not going to lie, I'm horrified by what you're saying," and that's not an uncommon response. And it just understood. I've gone through the same mental process, and so I think the important thing here is probably these are things you haven't been exposed to as much. And so it's worth just being knowledgeable about these and then make your own opinions. And you're welcome to differ from my approach. But I think it's just we need to be I would argue that some of these things that scale and speed our research are coming, whether we want to or not. And I love, like Paul was talking about, going and visiting people and seeing their world. And I don't do as much of that anymore. I really can't. And so I think there's another reality shift for us researchers in becoming one detached from doing the primary research ourselves. And then there's a challenge of how do we really embody the research or feel it? And the tools thus far have done a good job of sort of summarizing what happened, but not making you feel it yet. And so that's a new level of experience the tools need to provide us. And lastly, they're not as good yet. They're good at saying, here's generally what happened, but not in your circumstance with your business priorities and these competitors and where we are in the market and what we're special at. These are the most interesting things we should pay attention to. So we still need the humans to do that. They don't have that context yet that they're not context aware in the same way we'd want them to. I know people are working on that, but they really aren't quite there at that point. Um,
Well, John, I'd like to go further than that, really, and say the fact that we have anxiety about what you're saying, and the fact that we have
mm,
like, I'm
oh yeah,
horrified at hearing that. I think that means that's why we have to do this.
yeah.
That's why we need this discussion, because I think things are changing really rapidly, and that emotion that we've attached to that indicates the need, the severity.
Yeah, in my class, one of the things I do is I show them these amazing capabilities, and then by that point, they're like, "Well, what's my job going to be?" Which is a fair question. And actually, I used an LLM to do futures thinking to say, "How will your job, evolve?" And really, I think it is this notion of being able to stitch these things together to create this amazing system. And no one else can do that than you. And logically, if you're the person only doing interviews by hand and someone else can do the scale, I would argue that you need to learn these things. So even if it's just to make sure you know what is relevant to your group or, with the level of criticality that you're not going to do these things, great. I just want you to have that sort of eyes wide open perspective.
And, John, we're going to be hitting up against 12:30 in a couple of
Mm,
minutes. Before we do that, this is a lot for people to take in very
it is.
quickly. You teach a workshop about this, right? Can you tell us
Mhm.
about your workshop and how do
Sure.
people look into that if they want to get more information?
Yeah, I'll drop it in the chat after we're off together. But there's a platform that's pretty popular now called Maven.com. And
Mhm.
really you can just search for my name in Maven, but it's called AI for Customer Research. And really what we do is we go through what's prompting that you need. Let's really use that. Let's really use AI that moderates interviews and see what kind of data we're getting from that. Let's really use AI for analysis and see, when we've got the original transcripts, we're all researchers, we can see what works, what doesn't. And let's try these synthetic users and just get a feel for it. And a lot of people, have gone through the process, and I'm sorry to call you out, Deirdre, but it's really true. You're not alone. Um, Sort of this, I used to like think these synthetic users were like horrible, and now, or these tools are just terrible. And now I'm got a little bit more optimism about, I can be empowered by these things. And it is different. And it's kind of like LLMs. We can't really go back from having these tools. And so I think it's how do we as a field and people who are really thoughtful and thoughtfully critical of these make sure we use them the right way and with ethically and thoughtfully. And so one of the reasons for teaching the class is to get those kind of folks to really help shape how we're doing this. Um,
Agreed. Is there anything in chat, John, that you want to address before we sign off on your part?
we got fairly lengthy responses here. Let's see. Actually, just one thing that I think is probably very common is you were talking about accuracy and how do you remove bias from models. This is So first of all, in AI analysis, these tools are designed to not have anything that they sort of make up, right? Hallucinate. So that's one piece. The bias piece, actually, so take these two specialized tools, Verve and synthetic users. They specifically are collecting they've got millions of people and they do regular interviews with them with these new tools and collect it across samples and across populations so that we don't get, people who look like Paul and I being, from Silicon Valley, being the mindset of that representation.
Right.
So though actually they understand that to be appropriate and make the best products and so on, we need to go past that bias. So has it accomplished it? I'm not sure, but they are trying. And how you say synthetic users are good enough or these biases are removed, it's a really hard question. And I encourage everyone to challenge it and try and figure it out.
And so these are a couple of the big chunks. Before I let you go, John, any other large chunks you want to mention of things where you're finding a lot of bang for the buck?
Yeah, actually the thing that I used to poo-poo very much and I learned and then now I'm a little more thoughtful is prompt engineering. So it turns out that actually, so let me give you one example. I'll get you to Google, or you can come to one of my free talks. I do a bunch. So in this case, if you do meta prompting, so meta prompting, and that's where you actually ask the LLM to create a prompt that represents what you want to accomplish. And you can simply ask it to ask you questions to build the prompt. And basically, it makes total sense that LLMs are not humans. They don't think like us. They don't represent the information like us. So there are things that we assume are just part of common sense that they don't have. So by having it ask you questions can actually make a much better prompt to get you more value. So in 30 minutes in other cases, I show people how to do that, how to analyze, an hours long interview in minutes, and how to create a synthetic user all from prompting. And so that's something that doesn't everyone has access to. So I want you to use the tool. And often people in, healthcare or banking can't get access to these specialized tools. That's a way to do things for them.
Well, John, I really appreciate you taking time out for this. I'm
It's a
very
pleasure.
excited about the possibility of people learning how to be more effective with these tools. So on Monday or Tuesday, Valeriu on the Strat team will post the video, and then we'll ask, for some more resources or a link back to your workshop. But thank you for joining us today, and thanks for sharing your
Oh
explorations with us.
yeah. No, my pleasure. And yeah, please keep learning, everyone, just like me. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Paul, for the opportunity.
Thanks, John. Happy weekend. All right, Tia, are you around?
Yeah, I am. I'm
Hey.
very anxious and also terrified with what was said. Just shared the article from Jared Poole. Recently, he was speaking about democratization of research. Like is exactly the expression that he used. He was saying like synthetic users. It's like not exactly democratization. It means, I mean, there is a misconcept about it. So maybe relevant. Well,
Wow. Okay.
hi, nice to meet
Hey.
you.
All right. Everybody, I want to introduce Tia Clement to you. She's a product designer at Red Sift. And I noticed Tia posting her explorations into AI and UX, and just thought she did a really good job of sifting through what was out there to find some relevant resources. So, hi, Tia. Welcome to the Stratosphere.
Hi, nice to meet you, everyone.
And thanks for starting with a bang. That was really good. Let's back up a step. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to your current position?
Now, that's a very long story. So, one day I'm waking up and I'm realizing that the place where I'm living is occupied. So, like, you go outside and you see an ocean of tanks. That changed my life. Like, where I was living, it was literally wildlife. Like, we were having dolphins and things. So, after occupation, I was pushed to civilization. So I'm discovering like systems, metros, ATMs, like systems that are so sophisticated and so beautiful. And that's when I fell in love with systems. And the more complex, the better. I don't know if you have the feeling when you remember when you saw ATM for the first time and you see this little hole, and then you have this enlightenment in your brain, like this is where my card goes. And then I started my UX degree. I learned about affordance, that the whole is actually that thing. And yeah, so unfortunately, I mentioned that I'm a refugee, so I had to finding a job wasn't easy for me. So I had to find the complex domain where I won't have much competition. So I started working with AI systems, relatively complex ones. So like analyzing measurements from smart meters or how to improve the summarization and systematization of medical history, like things like that. Now I'm working in cybersecurity. And yeah, we are trying to make human life more safe, I guess, in the big scale.
Wow. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that personal story with us. I
Sure.
appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about that beginning of that exploration. Did you have more of a graphic design background, coding, mathematics? What was your main study before you got into this work?
Okay, neither of that. Actually, I was working as a model. After the occupation, I had to find some work, and I started working as a model to get some money for master's degree. And I was observing e-commerce and how the shops were organized. And then I started working on the UX side of it. So learning more about the interaction design. So I think it was a right away human AI interaction. It was not a really transition. I think I'm from this younger generation who didn't have to go through the transition, but could dive in right away in the thing. So yeah, I didn't have to transition, to be honest.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of your resources. The thing that I noticed was the 10 resources that you published the other day. I realize that some of them are not yet in print, um, but let's talk about some of these resources. What was one of the first ones that you got into that you appreciated?
Um, I think the product management book that was out, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. It is from, oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm sorry, it's my first public talking, and I'm not really a good talker.
That's okay. Um, I'm just wondering about the resources when you first started studying AI. What was one of your favorite books or resources for that?
I'm not sure that designing AI products is like really so drastically different from designing any product. So for me, it was using the same approaches I was studying and applying it to the problems that I was finding. So it's not the technologies that I was starting with. That was more with the product, with the problem at hand. So like the first product that I was developing, that I was working on for like an AI system, was AI for churches. And you can like step away from it and see Bible as a huge mass of information that you need to organize and help people to swim through it and find relevant insights. You don't need to exactly understand how all the mess of AI product work, but to understand the goal of the person in front of that system. So uh, I think that from UX perspective, all the methods would perfectly fit. So,
Okay,
oh, thank you.
excellent. I keep, sorry, Valeria.
So, I'm sorry that I will. It's Marilyn Nika. It's a super unusual and beautiful name that I'm forgetting all the time. But she wrote this book about building AI-powered products. That's the one that I was recently reading that caught my attention most. And yeah, she was speaking about more of the life cycle of Gen AI products. And this is something I'm working on in my company. And she's writing this book more from a product management perspective. And like, I don't know if you have this feeling when you are working in your role and you have a limited perception of only your scope. And sometimes it feels like you need to understand more resources to see, to align your mental model with your colleagues so that your process is more smooth. You're like cogs that are seeing each other, understand how others are perceiving the same problem. So I don't always understand uh, product vision, and I'm having my design perspective. So, like that book helps me understand more, take a more holistic view on the process. Like, where does AI feature fit within the product, and make sure we are not starting with technology first, that we are finding this authentic problem to resolve. I know, like this with feature race for AI features, it's complicated sometimes to step back and say that we do not need more AI powered things, that maybe sometimes it's better to stick to good old programmatic approach. And I'm still trying to, like find my voice. I guess it's one of my challenges now to kind of resist the technology first, AI first approach. I would be curious how others are handling that because, yeah, I'm not good there yet.
Okay, so I think, like John, I think you're better at reading chat as we go, so feel free to do that as we go. But I want to ask you about that full product lifecycle. Are you referring to the product lifecycle as it sits within a company, or do you mean the larger like ecosphere project life cycle? Like, where did we get the electricity to do this, and what's going to be the
No, like from the perspective of the product. Like I can tell that about my company, we're having this transition from forget what I said. I'm not supposed to speak about it. I'm having indeed
okay,
forget the
scratch that,
reference. Yeah,
erase?
please edit it. Yeah, we're alive. That's
Not possible, but
um yeah, I think it's more from the full vision of where exactly we incorporate AI and where do we come back to our core mission? Like, yeah, don't know how to formulate it better.
okay.
I don't know. I don't know how designers get to express their thoughts so well. Like in my company there, I feel my position more like staying there and listening and taking notes from what I'm hearing from other people, digesting that, designing systems and bringing them in front of people again. And there are like salespeople who are so good with articulating the findings and the product. So every time I get to speak about the product, I am having difficulties. So
I guess what I'm
yeah.
trying to get to, Tia, is just sort of your learning process. I'd like to illuminate your learning process in AI so that other people who are on the call can maybe take some similar steps to that. And I like the resources that you compiled, but just tell me more about your journey of learning. Do you work with models, or do you use just a platform model that's kind of a black box?
I like how I found, how do I learn? How do I find my resources?
No, when you're working with AI products, as you're
Yes,
designing products at your job, are you mainly using LLMs that already exist as platforms, or are you creating models with your data scientist
I
from?
create models with my data scientists. Like I'm not aware of all the details that they are having on the like data side. I have like a general overview, and I'm trying to understand how to transform the data to give it some kind of face for the users so they can interact with it. Yeah, so kind of transfer the numeric information to something that user can, I don't know, exchange with. So finding the most appropriate shapes, I would say.
Okay, so there's certain parts of that where data scientists lets you in, and then there's a certain part where you just are on the outside of the model itself. It sounds like you've been able to have an impact on the inside of the model. What do you recommend to people to be able to have that kind of influence? Because it's not easy to get that influence.
So make friends with data scientist team. They are the loveliest people. I mean, I noticed from my work that the people with the more technology roles that are deep in the data-driven products and the complex interactions, they are not having a lot of support from design people, but it should be there. So I think that the more data science team should be included in design processes. So whenever I'm having like ideation session or anything, I'm always trying to include them because they would bring their understanding of limitations of what we can design or how the ideas will be implemented. So they have like some really powerful insights, but sometimes like me, they are suffering to articulate them in the design language. So I guess I would say to try to explain them how to articulate their thoughts and give them time to do that because sometimes it's important to let people, I don't know, have time.
Yeah, and it seems like sometimes they have different criteria they're trying to meet, but if you express it in terms of human experience, then I think maybe they can begin to see, how does this model work qualitatively? What is it optimizing for?
And yes, I'm not sure what to repeat that. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just to be able to have that kind of shaping means that you need to develop an understanding of some statistics, I would imagine, or some machine learning, or
Yeah, you do, you do. But I mean, statistics being a part of my life since I'm planning to do my PhD for from September. But I mean, there was no requirement for statistic when I was joining the company. But to understand better the terminology that the data science is using, I think it's better uh, to have some basic understanding. But I don't know if you notice, like when you're having people who are sincerely passionate about what they are working with, they don't mind finding abstractions and explaining the complex things in like everyday examples. So I think it's possible.
Right. I think maybe some people feel intimidated to try to develop that sort of relationship because they realize there's a lot of math there they're probably not going to understand. But I think like if you have your approach where you're going to go meet them, you're going to ask them to explain what they do, maybe ask them to explain the model in an experiential way rather than in a parameter way. Uh, I think that makes some
Yeah,
real,
exactly.
and then it's more of a
Like,
collaboration.
yeah, and I mean, even feeling stupid. I'm feeling stupid all the time. And I think it's normal, but every time I'm telling myself that it's fine. If I'm suffering through all the questions, mean that users will have less of those. I will just cover all the silly questions that they may have along the experience, and maybe we'll come up with some reasonable answers that can prevent some unneeded situations.
Yeah, but that messy part, I think, is where we add value because I think the data scientists are working in a kind of an abstract realm where things don't smell and bite and, get in the way and things like that. So to have somebody like you that's thinking through what's the experiential nature of this, that seems like a helpful thing for them.
Yeah, you're right. I see it more like a translator. So with my for expressing, I guess I'm kind of bridge or translator between different departments like data science, development, marketing, more like a business side. So a person who's trying to understand insights from every direction and blend them together. And yeah, being somewhere there in between, make sure everybody understands each other.
Okay, so far you've named some resources you've learned on the job as you got there. And now the next step is the PhD. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so there are not many programs where you can do AI research. So I'm gonna start my PhD in Capital Technology University with my supervisor that uh, was I got blessing already, and it will be in about human AI teams. And yeah, I want to understand better how they are interacting with each other, exploring dimensions like trust, how we are relying on the system, what are the obstacles to adoption of the system, like things like that.
I think that's a huge area for us because trust is somewhere where we can make a business case. A lot of the stuff that UX or design brings to the table, business stakeholders don't care about. But I
Yeah,
think trust is something where when it's not calibrated correctly for whatever you're trying to serve with the AI, then I'm not going to use the product, right? And then
yeah,
there's a big financial outcome to that.
yeah. Well, and I don't know, it's just not only that. I'm having a feeling the more I'm working with AI product, how immature it is, in fact, and how many errors are happening. I don't know, like even with this, the idea of having synthetic users, I have a feeling like I'm building products for humans. So why would I ask machines for the human insights? It's so primitive, but I don't know, it kind of makes sense to me.
Okay. And so the PhD program begins when, hopefully?
September.
Okay, and
Yep.
so that's kind of a different path from, hey, how do I make products to, hey, how do I do research, right? How do I understand from a statistically sound perspective? How do I understand what I'm designing?
Well, it's like we're designing products for people, and I'm trying to understand how they interact with the system, with the AI system that is more flexible. And somehow they are forming a team when they are offloading their cognitive process, and it requires so much coordination between exactly two. So you have to teach a human how to interact with the system and the system how to interact with a human, so it goes both way. That's why I see it more as a team, and I would like to explore in greater details the dynamic that is happening between them.
Okay. Um, I think that things are evolving rapidly, and so I imagine there's going to be a lot more talking happening to smart devices. What are you looking forward to in the future of AI design as you kind of extrapolate from where we are today? What are you looking forward to in terms of capabilities of tomorrow?
I have no idea, to be honest. Like, it's evolving so fast, and I am not having like this visionary insight on how it will be. Like, there are so many subjective opinions out there, but I don't have like objective vision to the future. So maybe there will be general AI. I don't know, but I'm not sure. So I cannot answer that.
Okay. And so, as an academic, do you think that your background in product design is going to ground you more in the real world, or are you going to
What do you
go,
mean?
or are you going to go strictly lab coat, you know, stethoscope research, 100%
Oh
after you do?
no, of course not. I mean, like with my background of a person who is discovering ATMs, I want everybody to have this kind of sparkle, the insight of understanding what the whole is for. So I'm building my products to, yeah, to make this kind of magic, smooth collaboration between human and the system. And academic research is just a tool to get there.
Okay. And as far as your work on AI products, which part of it have you enjoyed the most so far?
Release.
What is it?
Release when there are no release
Release.
when there are no problems.
Okay.
Like
Release.
when, yeah, release when yeah, there are no crashes, when everything works smoothly, and all the team is like feeling relieved. Like from my side, uh
I guess, I mean, are you more
hypothesis
like
being
on
validated, I guess.
are you more on the conceptual side or more on the production side?
Or have you worked like a founding designer? It's like you're doing everything. So in my company, I'm covering like every possible. I'm not a founding designer. We're like two in the team, but two is still very small. So I'm like covering marketing needs, designing the product interfaces, doing research for them, making illustrations for the website to explain how products work to the people who will have like, I don't know, 2 seconds attention span to trying to understand it. So trying to make it very conceptually concentrated, but yet accessible. So yeah, I cannot say that I'm like deep into something, but yeah, trying to build things. I guess when you're trying to build things, it's messy, and yeah, I'm not trying
Yeah.
to limit myself to something.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to ask people to put your questions into the chat. If you want to ask Tia a question, Tia, maybe you can check in chat and see if there's anything that you want to talk about. Talking about
Yes.
okay.
Uh, okay, that's not for me. How do you identify the gaps of human needs and help a human adopt an AI product? Which is your method to involve designers? Okay, I think I will start from the first one, the first part. How do you identify the gaps of human needs? Observing. Sometimes people cannot articulate their actions well enough, their needs well enough. There is a great example from about the cars. Like when you ask people who are using horses to navigate about the ideation of a car, they would not come up with the idea of the car. They would ask for faster horses. So you just observe how they are behaving and yeah, draw conclusions from there. Mm. Help a human adopt an AI product? That's more difficult question. There is a lot of resistance, and I think finding early adopters and demonstrating with their examples that the product is accessible. That's I think one of the most common approaches. Otherwise, like I don't know, building a good product that will be adopted, because if you are resolving the need that humans are having in their everyday life, ultimately the problem is solved, it will be adopted. What is your method to involve designers in this process? I know how to involve myself. I don't know how to involve others, to be honest. Who do you like to involve as the hypotheses are defined? I'm not sure I understand this question. Who do you like to involve as the hypotheses are defined? Paul, do you have an idea what this means?
Yes. At the beginning, we have hypotheses. We don't know why a certain problem or opportunity exists, and that's a certain stage. That's almost pre-concept, right? And so pre-concept, you have a hypothesis why something's happening,
Yeah.
and then let's investigate it, and then here's our solution that we're going to do after that. So
Okay. I mean, who do I like to involve? Like stakeholders, I think all kinds of stakeholders that I'm having, which are my end users, my business people who are requesting products from my site. So yeah, I'm trying to understand the needs of both and see how I can, what is the best trade-off on every side so I can find some kind of link between them so they meet each other. I'm building. Oh, thank you. My thinking as a product designer is that adoption is a challenge in the age of AI tools, meaning that traditional UX always said keep users to control. And when I view it as the human wants to feel smart, even when they don't know how to prompt, while the AI is in control of the response.
complicated.
Yeah, it is. I'm not sure how to answer that. Keep users in control. Well, I think it's more about having intent-driven exchange or like user control base. Like there's interesting parallel from Jacob Nielsen that he made that when we were interacting with the systems before, it was a direct interaction between the user and the like his computer. Like if I want to quit our webinar, I would just click on the cross on the window and that would communicate my intention. I mean, it would be straightforward from action to reply. But with AI tools, it's more like intent based. So, I mean, it's not about direct control of the system, but about system understanding my end need. I'm not sure how to explain it. No idea how people are able to come up with answers to such a complicated question in like 5 minutes.
All right.
Sorry, I'm not prepared
Good.
for it. I saw the name of the person, and I will think of an answer, and I will text him back.
Okay, we have a 2-minute warning. And so we have 2 minutes left. Let me ask you, in your learning journey, if you could just talk to people that haven't started your journey yet, or talk to yourself when you started it, what tips would you give them about AI specifically from your journey these past couple of years? What are some lessons learned or tips you would give that person who's just starting where you started?
I would say ask more and find mentors. Somebody who is in position where you want to get, and don't waste time on chasing trends. So if you want to grow as a UX professional, I mean, I'm not sure AI will still be there in like a year or two, as strong as it is now. So I would probably ask myself, is this is really what I'm interested in? And if it is, then pursue that and find somebody who is in position where I want to be in a couple of years and talk to those people and ask them which resources do I use? Because maybe what I know from my past is not relevant now because maybe now there are better resources. So
All right. Well, thanks for that, Tia. Thanks for spending time with us on Friday. Everybody, I will mention that we do have an AI bootcamp coming up, May 13th to 15th. It's going to be online. So if you want to make the transition from traditional user experience design to the design of AI products, check out the bootcamp. Tia, thanks so much for sharing your journey with us and have
thank
a
you.
wonderful weekend.